Good afternoon, viewers and listeners out there. Welcome to the British Business Podcast. And this afternoon, we've got a fascinating gentleman that's come to join us, flown in all the way from Northern Ireland. Sean Hogan is his name. You'll be fascinated the next 30 minutes in terms of his background, who he is, what he's done, and some of the things that you'll find out in terms of his business background. Welcome, Sean. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Michael.
So I'd like to kick off, if I may, to get a flavour for you as the man and sort of your background and how you got into business and what your journey was like, and give us a few snippets of the journey.
Okay. Well, I guess my business background, I'm older than I look, I think. So some people will recognise that I've been around for quite a few years. The hair is grey, the beard is white, and it didn't get that way by having an easy run through of either business or education along the way. So I've kind of started off my business career way back in the mid-70s. Now that'll give you an indication as to what age I am, okay? So I was working for Mobil Oil in London and Kingston upon Thames way back in the 70s. I had done a course at Manchester. It was a polytechnic at the time, and it was one of those business kind of OND, HND type courses. And I liked the idea of working in finance. I liked the idea of working with accounts. So when I joined Mobil Oil down in London, I really liked the idea of working in the finance department, and that was it. So that's where I kind of started off. And I kind of moved from there through various jobs. At that time in the 70s, things were quite rough in Northern Ireland. I moved back there and worked with Maxol Oil for a number of years. And then I ended up as working in credit control and in the finance department of a company called ABP. ABP is the Anglo Beef Packers. It's a very successful meat processing company. And I worked with them for a number of years. There were some industrial actions way back in the 70s and early 80s. And I left that company, but because I had just married, I think in 1979, I looked for a job. I took the first job that I could get, and it was in sales. And I spent the next 15, maybe just coming up to 20 years in a variety of sales environments. Everything from pharmaceuticals to capital equipment to food packaging, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I learned early on is that if you want to be successful in business, and sales is a very good introduction to the world of business. It's all very well sitting behind the desk and have people come to you, but if you want to go out and get involved in other people's lives, if you want to get involved in their business, then you need to be able to talk to them at their level. And I guess one of the things that I learned very early on in sales was the ability to be able to talk to people at their own level. So irrespective of whether I was talking to a board of directors about purchasing some very expensive capital equipment, or whether I was talking to someone that was running a small corner shop, then it was really important to win their trust and their understanding. So you need to be able to talk to them at their own level. You also need to be able to understand that very often as a salesman, you're going to be trying to talk to people that don't really want to talk to you, you know. So without wanting to be that foot in the door type salesman, you've got to really develop your own communicative skills. You've got to be able to talk to people. You've got to be able to have them understand what it is you're trying to impart with them. And I also learned the importance of ensuring that what you say is what they hear.
Yes.
And I got to understand very early on that that's not always the case. Sometimes you will have given your best presentation and you will think that you have cracked it. But they haven't heard what you've said. You know, you've said something and they heard something different. And you need to find a way to, first of all, understand that your message is not getting through. And then you need to understand how you're going to correct that. So I learned that very early on. And then as I worked my way through middle and senior management with various companies, it became hugely important whenever you're dealing with both superiors, your colleagues, your subordinates, that ability to be able to talk and have people understand where you're coming from. That whole, what you would call, I think what people refer to these days as your interpersonal skills,
yes.
Those softer skills, those communicative skills become hugely important. You really have to deal with people. Because at the end of the day, you know, people do business with other people. If they don't get on with you, then there's a much greater likelihood that you're not going to be able to do successful business with them.
Absolutely.
So you have to be able to build those personal relationships. And I think over the years I kind of saw myself as the type of person who was reasonably successful in building those relationships as you went along at all sorts of levels. And I got then to the stage where I looked at the wealth of experience that I had, and I realized I was now in my 30s and early 40s, and I wanted to complement this experience with some kind of formal qualification. So I went back to university and I did my master's. I did my master's degree then in organizational management. I think I was 42, 43 or something at the time.
Wow.
And I found it hugely interesting because a lot of the other students that were with me had just finished their degrees. So they were like 15, 20 years younger than I was. And whilst they were dealing in their lives with the theory of what was being taught to them, I was able to look at what was being taught to me and try and realize some practical applications for what I was hearing, particularly around those sociological and the organizational structure and governance issues, that kind of stuff. And it was hugely interesting to me. And then, so whenever I got into senior management on a director level, my life took a little bit of a turn because, due to some family illnesses and, my parents were getting older, I took an interest in the health service. And a job became available, or a position became available as a non-executive director with one of the health authorities in Northern Ireland. And I thought, I'll give that a crack. I'll apply for that and see. There may be something that I've learned in business that I might be able to bring to that board. And so I applied for it, and I was very fortunate. I was appointed to that board, and part of the work that I did it was the Southern Health and Social Services Board at the time. And one of the pieces of work that I did for them was looking after people that had made complaints against their local GP, their local hospital, whatever it was. And my job was as a board representative, almost a complaints convener, to try and work out what this problem was and then try and resolve it, try and bring it to a satisfactory conclusion.
For both parties?
For both parties, yeah. Sure. Try and work out what had gone wrong and how to make it better. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then our local health trust, which was Newry and Mourne Health Trust, the position of chairman became available, and I applied for it, and I got appointed as chairman of Newry and Mourne Health Trust. All of my career, incidentally, has always been, well, practically all of it has been in Ireland, north and south.
Okay.
So I'm pretty much embedded in the community over there, north and south. So I became chairman of Newry and Mourne Health Trust. And one of the things that I started to learn then about the role of chairman was that it was a little bit different to what I thought it was going to be. Because it's quite a daunting, if you've never chaired a board of directors before, it can be very daunting arriving into a boardroom for the first time. You've met your CEO previously, but you're sitting there and you've got a finance director and you've got a director of social services, a HR director, you've got several non-executive directors, and all of these people are experts in their field. And if you're new to it, you can easily get it into your head that, what am I doing here? All of these people are experts. What is wee me doing here? I can't compete. I can't lead this board. And so you need to be able to get that confidence in yourself and then understand the role of the chairman a little bit better. And then I got to understand, well, look, I don't need to be an expert in finance because I've got one of those. And I don't need to be an expert in social services because I've got one of those. And I've got an HR expert. So my job as a chairman is to try and make a team out of these people. This is a diverse group of individuals. They are all experts and well respected in their own fields. And your job as chairman is to make a collegiate, a corporate team out of them to collectively work out the strategic direction of your organization, the trajectory in which you're going, and then you need to ensure that as a team you're all working towards the same goal. And of course you need to understand in corporate governance terms, you need to understand the difference between the executive role and the non-executive role, and that hugely important relationship between the chairman and the chief executive of the organisation, and how those two roles are completely separate yet complementary to each other. So there is that role of both support and scrutiny for the non-executives, vis-a-vis their executive colleagues. And sometimes when that relationship goes wrong, and I've seen it go wrong in organisations where the chairman and the chief executive have not hit it off, or there's been personality clashes, or there's been a confusion around the roles, and the businesses will always suffer. So there is a huge governance piece there to understand that relationship and the necessity to make it work well. And so I learned that quite early on. And I think I've been able to bring that experience as each role matured and I moved on to the next one. I think I've been able to bring that experience and that increased level of governance maturity or corporate maturity with me to the next role. So one of the next roles that I had...
Can I stop you there for a second?
Sure, of course.
Can you tell our listeners and viewers when the first chairman role came up and when you entered into that, and then tell us about sort of positions or how many or what it involves?
The first chairman role was the one for the Newry and Mourne Health and Social Services Trust. So I'm guessing in a timeline that would have been around 1994, 95, something like that.
26 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been the first chairman's role that I had.
Wow.
So I've been, I suppose, continuously chairing boards of directors since then, and I still do. Currently, I'm chairing Newry Credit Union, which is the second largest credit union in Northern Ireland. In transactional terms, in 2020, we had just over 100 million in transactions in that year. I also chair the board of a company called Water Regs UK Limited, so that's the water regulations. It's based in GB. It's a really nice board of directors. The non-executives on that board would be the executive directors of the GB water utility companies.
Okay.
So there'll be somebody there from Thames Water, Yorkshire Water, Scottish Water, Welsh Water, that kind of thing. So that's that board. I currently do that. I'm also on the board of a company called Urvia, based in Dublin. Urvia is the parent company of Irish Water Limited, Gas Networks Ireland Limited, and Aurora Telecoms Limited. Irish Water is a new. We're currently making a new, or establishing a new standalone public utility, which will be Irish Water. We spent the first couple of years transferring the information systems, data systems, information systems, finances, billing systems, and indeed people from 26 local authorities into this one group, into one company, bring it under group control Urvia, and we're now in the process of separating it out, so disentangling that from the gas networks and from the telecoms business, and we're establishing that as a single set-alone public utility, Irish Water Limited, and we hope to have legal separation for that around Q1 next year, so probably early 2023 we would like to have that legal separation.
How long did that start?
Oh, that started originally way back in 2015.
Wow.
You know, so it was a big onerous job, and it's still ongoing. It's a massive project. You know, there is the amounts of money that is required in a water utility company is huge, and we have some huge capital expenditure coming up over the next number of years. Probably one of the biggest projects will be to bring a trunk pipeline from the Shannon estuary across into the Greater Dublin area. You know, price tag in that currently at today's rate is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 billion euro. Construction won't begin on that until about 2030 or thereabouts. It's a massive project, but it's something that needs to be done in order to get that water supply into the Greater Dublin area. So I do that, but then something absolutely entirely different and something that I really enjoy. I've worked with the Department of Agriculture in Northern Ireland for a long number of years now. I got appointed chair of the Agri-Food and Biosciences Institute. I'm trying to think when, 2006 I think it might have been. As its first chairman, so my job there was to put a new board of directors together with a brand new CEO, new board. And my instruction at the time from the department was to try and increase the commercialisation of this organisation. It was a fascinating organisation, it really did. And agriculture is and agri-food is a huge part of the Northern Ireland economy. And this organisation had everything from, it had a research vessel on the Irish Sea that monitored fish stocks and the ecosystems there, produced all the data for Brussels to produce the fish quotas. You know, that was one section of it. We had scientists in there, everything from marine biologists to botanists to veterinary scientists, across the spectrum, right across everything. And it was a hugely interesting organisation. But part of it was to try and commercialise the science and try and get it to a point where the science pays. We were particularly successful in our research and diagnostic capabilities, and so we set about selling those as almost as a product to businesses.
Sure.
And we established MOUs with the Chinese Academy of Agriculture and Science. We recruited a business development exec in the US to expand that business in the United States. We even had people in Erbil in Kurdistan and had met with representatives of the Kurdistan regional government at the time to establish agriculture and grasslands in that part of the desert. Hugely fascinating stuff. And one of the things that I was really interested at that time was speaking to schools to try and get kids interested in the STEM subjects, interested in the science. And
did you take that on independently because you had that passion, or was that part of the remit that you'd put together?
No, it wasn't part of the remit. But one of the things that I looked at when I first took over that role was the age profile of our scientists. Now, at that stage we had about 700 employees, all scientists. There was only, I think, maybe 50, 60 admin type staff, but the bulk of them were specialist scientists in their own field. But if you looked at the age profile, it became apparent that, over the next 10, 15 years, a lot of these guys and ladies are going to retire.
Sure.
They're going to be gone. And if we want to maintain the success of this business, we need to get some sort of succession planning.
New blood.
We need some new blood in it. And science isn't all that. It's not as sexy as some of the other, topics in school. Like marketing and advertising and all that kind of stuff. So part of it was talking to schools and to pupils and getting them to understand, that science. When you talk to school children, their understanding of science is some fusty old guy in a white coat with a Bunsen burner and a test tube, and they go, oh God, and they have no interest in that at all. But if you could get them out of the classroom and onto our ship and let them see, the underwater cameras, and let them see how the scientists are working on board the ship. These are all marine biologists, and you get them to be interested in science as a subject, across the spectrum of science. We had grass specialists there that were developing grass seeds that are specific to, if you have dairy cattle and you want a specific type of grass to improve, the milk production, there's a particular type of grass for that. If you have a golf course and you want a different type of grass that you don't have to mow as often and it'll grow and it'll be very tough, there's a different type of grass for that. Now, that didn't happen by accident.
No.
The scientists,
worked it out.
Managed all that and crossbred different grass seeds in order to come up with one like that. Really, really interesting stuff. And so it was, I felt it was really worthwhile to try and get some students and young people into, to follow the sciences. I suppose I was being a bit mercenary. I wanted to ensure that there was a constant flow of young scientists into the organisation, and that's really was my passion behind it. But I've also worked with agriculture on another front, and I currently chair an expert committee with the Department of Agriculture on the eradication of bovine tuberculosis in the national herd in Northern Ireland. And I've been doing that since 2014 now, so about 7-8 years now. And so we originally put together a team of scientists and economists and farmers, and we tried to understand the causation of the disease and the spread of the disease. Why does this disease spread in the manner that it does? Where does it come from? We know that cattle spread it from one animal to another. We also know that there's a wildlife vector in there. It's quite controversial, but we know that badgers also have the disease, and there is a transmission. It's a bidirectional disease, so cattle will give it to badgers, badgers will give it to cattle. So if you're going to try and get on top of it, you really need to try and understand where this is coming from, and you need to tackle it wherever it is. It's very controversial. There will be people on one end of that spectrum that say, just let us take out the badgers and we can throw this out overnight. And then you will get people at the other end of the spectrum saying, not a single hair on the head of a single badger will you harm. And so somewhere in the middle, you've got to try and come up with a,
and that's your
a
ground.
strategy. Yeah, that's the working ground where you're working, and you're trying to steer a path through all of that. And the current agriculture minister has launched a strategy for doing that based on the advices that we've given them. So we're working on the outworkings of that at the moment, and we'll take that forward as need be. So I guess my career to date has been a variety of roles and positions. I have to say I've thoroughly enjoyed every single one of them.
And
I think I've learned something from every single one of them, and I think probably one of the things that I found most important was that at the end of the day, no matter which of these roles that I was in, I was always dealing with other people, and your ability to develop a relationship with that person or group of people who may or may not think the same way as you do, but you must respect their opinion.
Sure.
You must listen to what they have to say, and if you have any chance at all of trying to arrive at a compromise or working out a corporate trajectory for the organization that you're in charge of, whether that's a committee or whether it's a board of directors, whatever it is, you need to be able to pull that team of people together. And so those interpersonal and communication and communicative skills are hugely important. You've really got to excel at those. I'd like to think that I've been successful in these things. I'm looking forward to continuing in that vein. In my later life, as I got into my 60s, I'm 67 years of age now, as I got into my 60s, I realised that I'm not the retiring type. So I'm lousy at golf, and daytime TV does nothing for me. So the thought of retiring and doing nothing, it doesn't appeal to me at all. So I set up a little consultancy just under my own name, STS Consultancy Limited. It's I describe it as a boutique advisory service. So we're not like other consultancies that we're a catch-all, we do everything for everybody. That's not what we do. We look to find issues or problems that companies have, and then we seek to try and find solutions for them. So it's very much a one-on-one personal type service. And I suppose one of the things that attracted me, if you like, to Success EXP was actually that program of being able to look at a particular issue that businesses have, and that they need, and that they don't always see it as an issue. They don't always see it as a problem, but it's how they interact with their own employees. I've always felt that a business's employees are not only their most expensive asset, but they are also their most valuable asset. And they're the most valuable asset because they are the ones that interact with your stakeholders, with your clients, with your customers every day. And it doesn't matter whether they're frontline staff that deal with them face to face, if they're back office staff and they're dealing with sending out information or answering the phones or sending out invoices or letters or whatever it is. How they do that has the potential to have a positive or negative impact on your clients, customers, patients,
ultimately the business.
ultimately on the business, you know. So they are hugely important. They're a very, very valuable asset. And I think from time to time, employers, and I know in business that I've been in, you will be in a position where you are asking those employees to go that extra mile for you from time to time. And the relationship between management and employee comes to the fore at that point. You're asking them to do something, and often employees will look back and think, well, what does my employer think of me? What has my employer done for me? And so there is an opportunity from time to time for an employer to do something that will show that that loyalty goes both ways.
Wonderful.
That the loyalty from the employee to the employer is hugely important and it's valued. And that there is a requisite, there is a reciprocity there, that the employer has a loyalty to his employees. And that's demonstrable, and you can show that. And I think that that's one of those things that that Success EXP has demonstrated to me, and I think it's something that I'm really looking forward to talking to my own business contacts with and about that program and introducing it to them, because I genuinely feel that it has the potential to be of a huge benefit to them, to both employee and employer. I can honestly say that I've never come across, and I've been around a few years, I've never come across a program that has all of the ingredients in one package. I've come across wellness programs, I've come across HR programs, I've come across benefit programs, you know, all as separate standalone
Yes.
pieces of software or programs or whatever. I've never come across one that encompasses all of them under one platform and allows you to deliver that and more.
Yeah.
You know, and that's hugely exciting. You know, so I am looking forward to introducing this to businesses in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, because I think, quite frankly, some of them will be astounded. The kind of benefits that we're talking about here very often are you only find them in very large PLCs.
Sure.
You know, you tend not to find them in SMEs, and this is a way of introducing that to everybody, to businesses large and small, and I think they'll definitely benefit from it.
Sure.
Wow. I've probably talked. Talked too much now.
Sean, that was amazing, and viewers, listeners out there, if ever there was a masterclass in understanding how to become a chairman and then what you do whilst you're in that position, was just absolutely incredible. Anything else you want to run over? You want to mention?
No, I suspect, Michael, that you and I will be talking at length.
Sure.
You know, in the coming days and weeks and months, and I have to say, I'm very much looking forward to introducing some of my clients to you, and new clients, people that I haven't even met yet. I think there are very interesting times ahead for both of us, and I think the retirement date has just been pushed back a few more years, thankfully.
Sean, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in and seeing us today. Viewers, listeners out there, the British Business Podcast. Until next time.